Before I introduce today's hearing topic, I'd like to acknowledge committee members who are currently present. Thank you, Councilmember Avilés, for being here. I also want to extend my appreciation to the New York City Economic Development Corporation and other stakeholders for participating in this important hearing. Today, we will hear 6 bills and 1 resolution. These bills include 3 that I have sponsored: Introductions 164, 165, and 810. Introduction 164 would require the Department of Small Business Services, or EDC, to produce a report delineating a quantitative and qualitative analysis of the projected impact of a proposed economic development project on affected communities. 30 days prior to the approval of the award of an economic development benefit for a project, a community impact report would be submitted to the council. Introduction 165 would require the mayor to designate an office or agency to conduct a feasibility study on the creation of a linkage fee that a developer would pay for any residential or commercial construction project that is larger than 100,000 square feet. The fee is intended to fund job training for workers to be employed at the project site and for job contribution, which is paid into a trust for the benefit of the community within a 2-mile radius of the job site. Introduction 810 would alter the terms of a contract between the city and EDC and require EDC to create a public housing entrepreneurship program to support public housing residents in growing their businesses. The bill would also require EDC to issue a report about the viability of using NYCHA-owned vacant property for commercial pop-ups. In addition to my 3 bills, we have 2 bills sponsored by Councilmember Avilés, Introductions 860 and 861, and Introduction 844, sponsored by Councilmember Riley. Introduction 860 would require EDC to include additional job training and employment data for projects over $150,000 in its annual report. Introduction 861 would alter the terms of the contract between the city and EDC by requiring EDC to include disclosure of certain details regarding community benefit agreements related to EDC projects in its annual report. Introduction 844 would alter the contracts between the city and the EDC by requiring EDC to offer microgrants up to $10,000 where appropriate to establish, expand, or grow businesses as part of the public housing entrepreneurship program. Lastly, we will hear Resolution 77, which I have sponsored. The resolution calls upon the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign legislation that would create a linkage fee for large-scale residential or commercial projects and create a trust that would receive this fee to fund job training, education, and employment programs. And even though I read all of that, we're having a tech problem, and I will probably have to start again, so we're going to pause.
Can you copy the Zoom in the room?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just gonna start from the top, just in case, just for public record and good government transparency. All right, y'all, just gonna make sure that's on record. Good afternoon and welcome to this hearing of the New York City Council's Committee on Economic Development. I am Majority Leader Amanda Farías, Chair of the Committee on Economic Development. I wanna thank you all for being here today, and before I introduce today's hearings topic, I'd like to acknowledge committee members who are present and acknowledge Councilmember Avilés has joined us. I also want to extend my appreciation to the New York City Economic Development Corporation and other stakeholders for participating in today's important hearing. Today we will hear 6 bills and 1 resolution. These bills include 3 that I have sponsored, Introductions 164, 165, and 810. Introduction 164 would require the Department of Small Business Services, or EDC, to produce a report delineating a quantitative and qualitative analysis of the projected impact of a proposed economic development project on affected communities. 30 days prior to the approval of the award of an economic development benefit for a project, a community impact report would be submitted to the council. Introduction 165 would require the mayor to designate an office or agency to conduct a feasibility study on the creation of a linkage fee that a developer would pay for any residential or commercial construction project that is larger than 100,000 square feet. The fee is intended to fund job training for workers to be employed at the project site and for job contribution, which is paid into a trust for the benefit of the community within a 2-mile radius of the job site. Introduction 810 would alter the terms of the contract between the EDC and the city and require EDC to create a public housing entrepreneurship program to support public housing residents in growing their businesses. The bill would also require the EDC to issue a report about the viability of using NYCHA-owned vacant property for commercial pop-ups. In addition to my 3 bills, we have 2 bills sponsored by Councilmember Avilés, Introductions 860 and 861, and Introduction 844 is sponsored by Councilmember Riley. Introduction 860 would require EDC to include additional job training and employment data for projects over $150,000 in its annual report. Introduction 861 would alter the terms of the contract between the city and EDC by requiring EDC to include disclosure of certain details regarding community benefit agreements related to EDC projects in its annual report. Introduction 844 would alter the contract between the city and the EDC by requiring EDC to offer microgrants up to $10,000 where appropriate to establish, expand, or grow businesses as part of the public housing entrepreneurship program. Lastly, we will hear Resolution 77, which I have sponsored. The resolution calls upon the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign legislation that would create a linkage fee for large-scale residential or commercial projects and create a trust that would receive this fee to fund job training, education, and employment programs. Before I turn the floor over to my colleague to speak on her bill, I would like to express my hope that this legislative package would help establish specific initiatives to support economic development and job creation in public housing. Expanding agency transparency on how they are helping these communities while creating new programs that target the underserved are imperative steps to offset negative community impacts that relate to large economic development projects throughout our city. Finally, I would like to thank the Economic Development team here at the Council, Senior Counsel Alex Polinoff, Senior Policy Analyst William Hongach, and Finance Analyst Glenn Martelloni for all their hard work preparing for this hearing. I will now turn the microphone over to Councilmember Avilés to speak on intros 860 and 861.
Thank you, Chair Farías, and thank you everyone for being here today and for putting our two bills, Intro 860 and 861, on the agenda. I believe both of these are critical to achieving greater transparency with regards to economic development plans in our communities. I guess starting with Intro 860, I want to provide just a bit of context. In District 38, the EDC has often made promises to execute large projects that require substantial public investment, promising our neighborhoods significant economic and workforce development opportunities that unfortunately never seem to materialize as they are sold. In District 38, one such example is the Made in New York campus, launched in 2017, way before all of our times. EDC promised that through this film and television hub placed in Sunset Park, they would be able to advance diversity and equity in the media and entertainment industries, create thousands of jobs. Our community has yet to see those particular benefits, and we know the project is soon to launch, especially in terms of local workforce development. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Industry City, an EDC project we are now many, many years into, and yet the economic development benefits of that project has not yet seemed to cross over 3rd Avenue and into our community. As such, our community has grown very weary and are now understandably extremely skeptical of any EDC announcement of any project promising redevelopment of the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, of which I'm very excited about, yet it's still hard to hold any local benefits there that we see. So Intro 860 would ensure that the EDC reports on key measures for such projects, including community engagement efforts to promote local hiring, zip code data regarding participants in job training programs, and whether jobs are full-time or part-time, seasonal or temporary, union or non-union, to name a few of the metrics included in this legislation. Understanding these metrics is critical to understanding the true benefits of these projects to not only our neighborhood, but to the city. Moving into Intro 861, this local law would amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to requiring disclosure of community benefits agreements in the annual report by certain contracted entities. As part of certain economic development projects, EDC may also engage in community benefits agreements, the contents of which community members may not actually be aware of, and at times, the intended benefit may even fail to materialize. In one such example in my district, the MSC cruise operator agreed to donate funds towards a green thumb garden in Red Hook as an acknowledgement of the lucrative agreement that they had reached with the EDC. However, no such green thumb garden actually exists in Red Hook. It was given to another community. And Red Hook community was left scratching their head as to how this came to be considered our community benefit. Both of these bills are critically important for understanding how local communities benefit from large-scale economic development projects that often feel extractive. So I look forward to robust conversations so how we can arrive at the best possible legislation. And I know this is work that we have been working on together in partnership with EDC to be more transparent, to be more clear and exacting, and also to include the community in part of the decision-making, not just tell us what our benefits are. And I think that is a really important element that I will continue to press ever in my tenure as council member and as a resident. So with that, thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. I'd also like to acknowledge we've been joined by Councilmember Bottcher. I'd like to remind council members and members of the public that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. For those members of the public, if you agree with something that is being stated, please use this hand gesture. Otherwise, all members of the public shall remain silent. I will now like to ask members of the administration to raise their right hands as the affirmation is read by our committee council.
Please raise your right hands. To all members of the administration testifying today, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you. You can begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Farías and members of the Economic Development Committee. My name is Shahyla Stevens, and I am the Director of Equity and Community Impact for the New York City Economic Development Corporation. I am joined by my colleagues PJ Berg, who is the Executive Vice President for Real Estate Transaction Services Department, and Mikkel Adgate, who is our Senior Vice President of Government and Community Relations Department. The New York City Economic Development Corporation is charged with creating a vibrant, inclusive, and globally competitive economy for all New Yorkers. Our work is guided by 4 strategic priorities: strengthening business confidence, growing innovation industries with a focus on equity, building neighborhoods as places to live, learn, work, and play, and delivering sustainable infrastructure. I want to thank the Council and this committee for your continued partnership in supporting economic development projects and programs to benefit local communities, residents, and businesses across all 5 boroughs. Regarding 860 and 861, we would like to state that we would like to support and advance equitable economic development. And in 2022, EDC created the Equity and Community Impact Division to both strengthen and better quantify EDC's impact across communities. I'm privileged to serve as the first director of this pillar, which is designed to mobilize EDC's equitable economic development strategy, focused specifically on economic mobility in areas such as MWBE, workforce development, diverse entrepreneurship. My group's initiatives are designed to deliver direct positive impact for all New Yorkers, focusing on enhancing quality of life and promoting equity across the city. At EDC, we take our mission of creating an inclusive economy for all New Yorkers seriously, and we are proud of our transparency and the work that we do to ensure that our projects benefit local neighborhoods. To that end, we look forward to working with the Council on Introduction 860 and 861, and working together to provide additional reporting on community benefits commitments, job training, and employment associated with EDC projects. Assessing and ensuring positive community impact of our projects is an essential part of EDC's work. To that end, in January 2024, EDC launched its first measurement and evaluation strategy, focused on deepening our understanding of EDC's community impact. EDC is currently developing robust mechanisms to ensure positive impacts occur, such as developing metrics that allow us to annually measure our agency-wide equitable dollar investment in opportunities that result in increased jobs, diverse entrepreneurship access, innovative industry expansion, and stronger, more sustainable communities across New York City. Our data collection efforts will provide a baseline of our current citywide community impacts, while providing evidence for how EDC can cultivate additional investment opportunities, particularly within the city's disadvantaged communities. Additionally, EDC's in-house research team conducts a variety of impact-related analysis with an aim towards ensuring positive fiscal impact for all of our projects. With respect to reporting, EDC is committed to transparency, and to that end, we already track and produce a vast amount of data regarding a wide range of community impacts. Today, we will highlight 3 of those efforts: our annual investment projects report, the NYC EDC Impact Report, and the Mayor's Management Report. The annual investment projects report is submitted to the New York City Council and posted on the EDC website by January 31st of each year. Last year, this comprehensive 3-volume report totaled over 900 pages and covered 449 projects. It provides robust information on projects that receive financial assistance in excess of $150,000, including, among others, project name, location, land and square footage, type, duration, and estimated total amount of city assistance received, employee information, including where applicable, information regarding NYC residency, health benefits, the number and percentage of employees earning less than a living wage, and for projects with 250 or more employees, compensation data within 3 wage bands. We are proud of this transparency, and we believe this report gives the council and public extensive insight into EDC's projects and initiatives. The EDC website also includes a link for public comments and questions. EDC also publishes an annual impact report, which provides a user-friendly review of EDC's work over the year, providing highlights on our project progress, as well as qualitative and quantitative insights about programs and initiatives. This document is available in print and online to the public and provides a synthesized view of our work, including many of the areas of interest in Introduction 164. EDC also reports to the public and the City Council twice yearly as a part of the Preliminary Mayor's Management Report, or the PMMR, which covers performance for the first 4 months of the fiscal year from July through October, and the annual Mayor's Management Reports, including information on our operations as well as key performance metrics. While EDC supports the spirit of the Introduction 164, we believe that the preparation of these reports would be extremely costly, and the information reported would be redundant to information EDC already reports. In addition, EDC's projects often go through extensive public review processes, such as environmental review, the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, or ULURP, or similar public review processes, many of which already contain detailed disclosure requirements that overlap with the requirements considered by information concerning residential and business displacement. This bill would require significant additional analysis and will delay projects, necessitate the hiring of more consultants, and ultimately increase project costs. All things that we believe are not in the interest of New Yorkers who want government to move faster and spend more wisely. For all those reasons, we are opposed to Introduction 164. Turning to Introduction 165, which seeks to require a study on the feasibility of establishing a commercial and residential linkage fee, the administration is opposed to a linkage fee feasibility study. The administration believes that the linkage fees are not the best vehicle to support New York City communities. Specifically, the city is confident that linkage fees, which operate as tax on development, would discourage the very housing production that the city desperately needs to solve its current housing crisis. It also broadly believes that such fees would act as barriers to new development that would help to expand the city's tax base and allow council and the administration more funding to carry out key initiatives. We support the city's existing approach to funding workforce development programming. For all those reasons I've outlined, the administration cannot support the proposed linkage fee study. In the current environment, and given our substantial concerns about linkage fees, undertaking a study at this time would needlessly divert resources and staff time. With respect to Introduction 810 and 844, which address public housing entrepreneurship, a commercial pop-up program, and microgrants, the New York City Housing Authority, not EDC, is the appropriate entity for these efforts. NYCHA already has established entrepreneurship programming facilitated by the Office of Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability, or REES program. REES and its partners throughout the city already work to help NYCHA residents launch or grow business through business education, access to financing, affordable space, and other key assistance. Strategic expansion and increased funding of these initiatives under REES accomplishes the goal of the legislation without creating redundancy. EDC remains happy to collaborate with NYCHA and REES as appropriate to support and grow their existing programs. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, folks, for your testimony this morning. I have a couple questions based off of your testimony, and then I'll jump into the general questions around the legislation. Just quickly on the three reports that you folks already administer outwards. Where do they get sent? Is it just to the mayor's office, or both to the mayor and the city council? Or is it mayor's office and then just publicly listed on your website?
So the annual investment projects report, we have a hard copy here available, is submitted to the mayor, the city council, and available on the EDC website.
Okay.
available on our website, but we also print hard copies.
Okay. And then the MMR is sent to the mayor's
It
office.
goes through
and
the
city
same
council.
process.
Okay, great. And then in terms of Intro 164, you believe the preparation of the reports would be extremely costly. That's just a guesstimate, or have we looked at an estimation of cost?
So we have started to think through what the costs would entail. Depending on the size and the scope of the project, it could be tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars, given the amount of detail that is being asked for in that reporting. In addition, because of the time that the reporting is asked to be submitted, we're concerned that it will actually delay project implementation, because if we are doing that type of analysis before we even go through, say, an environmental review process or a ULURP process, that would essentially slow down the work that we are trying to do.
Okay, great. And then I see you listed that the administration doesn't believe linkage fees are the best vehicles to support New York City communities. Has that been a conversation you've been having back and forth with the administration, mayor, and the deputy mayor, or is that just EDC's perspective?
Thank you for the question, and yes, it is. We've consulted with our partners across the administration and confirmed that, during a once-in-a-generation housing crisis, any action that could exacerbate the housing crisis and jeopardize our jobs recovery is it's not something that we agree with.
Have they answered to how they plan on getting community commitments from development happening in communities? Because they have not been able to do that over the last 2 years.
How to obtain commitments
From the developments, like our CBAs that happen around surrounding development in communities, whether that's been following up on things that have been from a previous administration or getting firm commitment through an MOU or any legal ways, which we are unable to do. Have they said to you how they plan to get fulfilled commitments through development if linkage fees is not an option that they're willing to consider?
I'll pass it back to Mikkel to begin an answer.
Sure. So, Councilmember, Majority Leader, the conversations that we've had so far about linkage fees in particular are about the principle of an added development fee. We didn't speak specifically with other agencies about existing community benefit agreements and securing commitments. For that side, I can only speak to the EDC process, and as you know, with many of our projects, whether we have points of agreements because of rezonings that we've supported, or we've had commitments that council members and EDC have been able to secure. In those dynamics, we work very closely with the developers as well as our in-house teams to ensure that those are fulfilled. But I do think, to Councilmember Avilés' point about transparency on those commitments, particularly between administration changes, that's something that we're striving to improve on. And I think with Shahaila's team, it's one of the ways that we're really working to improve on. And that's why we look forward to working with the council on 860 and 861 in particular, because we do think that that transparency will be helpful in ensuring that the commitments that were made are actually fulfilled upon.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way at least I'm viewing my role here as a legislator with a limited amount of time, my goal is to make sure I'm leaving New York City, families, the Bronx, people in District 18, better than how they were when I got here. I think it's pretty disingenuous from the administration to say that this seems as if it will operate as a tax on development when we know good and well the city doesn't have the ability to put any taxes, especially on development, along with the fact that we have not yet to today been able to get developers to commit to their CBAs, along with, and I do just want to say, it is not lost on any of us that when we're working on a ULURP or when we're working on a project with an agency, that the financing today, by the time they get to implement, looks different in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And so sometimes that has to be, the CBAs have to be readapted, or the job training that has to be put in place couldn't be fulfilled completely, et cetera. to me, this feels, I'm trying to think of a better word than saying lazy from the administration to immediately say no to this, considering that they were left with projects from their predecessors, just the same as I was left with projects from my predecessor, where we have to always clean up the people's before us's mess. This is a way to solidify that there is a pocket of funds dictated somewhere to ensure whether it's a prevailing wage project, it's a local hire or community hiring project, or we need to create a pipeline in a local school with a STEM, construction, aviation, whatever background, that there's always going to be a continuous designated pot where we can ensure the community that they are included in a development project. And so our conversations will continue after this hearing, but I just want to put that out there, in that we have to create things that live beyond us with certainty and with funding to ensure that we're creating foundation or stabilization for communities. Especially with the fact that while we have great numbers in job creation, we all know in this space that we have created more low-wage jobs than we have mid-wage or high-wage jobs throughout the city. And union employment, job training, and credentialed construction, building trades and construction fields are a direct pathway into midway and high-level employment throughout this city. So I will just put that there. And then actually, I can ask this to council, but do you folks offhand know how long the Office of Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability, the REASE program, has existed?
We do not know how long it's existed.
We'll check offline. Okay, thanks folks. Okay, so during fiscal year 2023, many subsidized economic development projects for both commercial and residential were those recorded. How many, do we know how many they were recorded in FY23?
Yes, Majority Leader. So as we mentioned, as part of our annual investment projects report, we do report on a variety of projects. The number that we cited in our testimony was 449 for the previous fiscal year. And so for details on any of those specific projects, we could follow up with you.
Great, and the data that was captured, was there any additional outside of what you listed here for any of those projects?
In terms of additional analysis, so one of the things, and I'll turn it back to Shahila to talk about, is with us standing up the measurement and evaluation team to go even deeper into what is currently reported, is one of the things that her team is focusing on now.
So just to shine a little bit of light on our measurement evaluation efforts, it's the goal of that particular work to be able to provide neighborhood-specific and disaggregated data points so that we can speak more clearly to whom and where these individuals may be getting jobs, where we may be supporting entrepreneurship, including diverse entrepreneurship, and also to be very specific with those that contract with EDC around where and how they should outreach to communities. And also in this measurement and evaluation effort, we are also trying to stand up the proper tracking mechanisms to be able to effectively report back on the progress and the execution of the community benefit agreements.
Okay, great. And then how does EDC currently attract potential developers, either commercial or residential, to areas that are distressed, if at all?
I'm sorry, Councilmember, are you talking about development as a whole or EDC specific
For like our
projects?
city subsidized projects.
So for EDC specific projects, keeping in mind that there may be city subsidy
Sure.
from HPD or other partners, we have both the work that we do as part of our team, but also the coordinated efforts with city agencies. So that's the tracking that we have included in the annual investment projects report. It's how we, share information with community boards and elected officials as we go through those various processes. Just keeping in mind that depending on the type of EDC project, could require different public approvals processes, right? So some projects obviously go through ULURP last year we worked with Councilmember Botcher on a project that went through 13012G, which is a separate public approvals process and has its own sort of tracking and requirements in terms of public input as well. But I will hand it over to PJ in case there's any other thoughts on that.
I'll add, my department manages transactions where the city is, for instance, putting a publicly owned site up for a development opportunity, and we engage with the local community board and with local developers and have a robust marketing effort to make sure that the opportunities are really well publicized.
Okay, and when new large-scale commercial development occurs within the city, how does EDC calculate the economic impact to the surrounding area? And what metrics are used to do so?
I think we'll have Mikkel start with that, and then PJ can.
So we have an in-house environmental and economic research program that will look at a project that is sort of potential, look at the opportunities that could be available with it based on, workforce opportunities, the commercial inputs that could be included, the real estate opportunities, and then they will do robust calculations to try to look at what the impact will be over, let's say 30 years, which in the case of Willets Point, when we put out a number that project would have X billion-dollar impact over 30 years, that work is being done by our ERP team. And so we do have information about how that methodology is calculated. It's available on our website. We also shared it back with the committee after our budget hearing.
Okay, great. And I know there's some difficulty and there's direct opposition to Introduction 164, but do you folks have the computational capacity to produce the data requested in the bill?
Based on what our view of it, I think we would need outside support, which is why, as we think about the cost, including additional consultant fees, to my point earlier, calculating the cost of those could be challenging depending on the size and scale of the project. I think we're very confident in the in-house team that we have now, in addition to what's being added on to as part of Shahila's work. And so, what we would, as we think about discussions with the council, we'd like to think about what we are doing now, but also what we're building upon, because I do believe that a lot of what is being asked for is available in these different reports. And so we want to make sure that we're not being redundant, but we're also providing the level of transparency that we agree with the council is necessary.
Sure. And as we continue talking about the bills, I do want to state, I only ask that because many times it seems as if these things are existing in separate worlds, and this is part of the reason why I think even with the public trying to get information from agencies, like, we all know we're producing it with our terminology where we know where to find it, but generally when we want to have analysis of what's happening in our communities or even legislatively where we should be moving to move the city forward, me having to come get a physical report and then ask you to print out all the other, I remember when I first became chair, I was like, can I get all of this stuff just so I can familiarize myself? And then I was handed 3 mountains of documents, and I was like, whoa, a lot to read. Sometimes our goal is to make it concise and clear for the public and for us to analyze, because I'm definitely not going to be the economic expert or the land use and real estate expert or the housing expert as the folks that you have in-house. So I'd love to keep talking about what that means and how maybe pulling from all these places annually, biannually, something to produce a document with ease is possible.
Majority Leader, if I could just respond back to that, I think that's very much the spirit and intent behind the impact report that we started developing not long after your tenure, because I think when we started in 2022, it was very clear to us that this 900-page document was not user-friendly. It doesn't help communities understand how EDC could be additive to their neighborhoods. This one is much more public-friendly. It has, if you look at it online, there's videos, there's audio. It's much more engaging. That said, the again, the level of detail that 164 in particular is asking for would sort of turn this into this, and we're really trying to ensure that we're being consistent across all of our reporting.
Okay, thank you for that. How does EDC plan to incorporate the community impact reports into its decision-making process for approving subsidized projects?
Thank you for that question. I think that the biggest piece here is that we want to have the opportunity to use the community impact reports and the measurement evaluation efforts to help inform and design our future projects, and also to assess the efficacy and the actual community-based impact. And so our goal here through measurement and evaluation is to have a number of tools through the life of a project that can tell us if we're going in the right direction, if we need to increase efforts, increase support around certain aspects, workforce, entrepreneurship, or just like community placemaking. And so we plan to use that information coupling with the information that comes out of our economic research team to help design and improve our programming to make sure that we're reaching and meeting the needs of the community and also keeping our promises.
Okay. I'd like to acknowledge we've been joined by Councilmember Salamanca, and I'll jump into questions around Introduction 165 with the linkage fee. In relation to new commercial development projects, how does the city ensure that jobs created by the projects are afforded to local residents?
Yes, so EDC has a number of ways to track the jobs that currently right now that are associated with our projects, primarily through the Hire NYC process. And so as those contracts are expected to meet the Hire NYC requirements, we're able to receive reports and data around the location of the potential employee, how many people were hired, if they actually use the Workforce One Center or any of those mechanisms to promote those jobs to the community.
Okay, and then are we dependent on the individual teams of the project to do the local hiring, to either work with the data collection of like where those folks live, who they've hired, and then what information is expected from them to give to us for us to track? Like if we know a project is supposed to have 10% local hire, this is an example I'm just using for the sake of it, how do we ensure, and at what timeline do we ensure before a project begins, that 10% is actually local hire?
So which that particular employee may have been hired from, their salary bracket, and also they're required to report if that person at the time of reporting is still employed, or if they have not been able to retain that person for, whatever reason. They may have left, they may have been terminated, but they do have to report if they were able to retain those employees.
And are you folks also just in consistent communication? I mean, I'm hearing you're getting this annually, so their consistency is somewhat happening because 12 months is a long time. But let's say you look back at the annual report given to you and it says 7 people didn't go through and they don't have reasonings, or 3 of those 7 are maybe were contracted for 6 months. Does that delineate out and mean that doesn't go to the local hire number? Like, are we evaluating what they're giving us and having conversations with those folks to produce better numbers, or to hire more local people, or to hire more women, or et cetera?
This is again why we brought on the measurement and evaluation strategy. I will say, very directly that we engage with the contractor and/or employer at, like I said, on an annual basis. If it's found that they cannot prove good faith efforts, so positive and measurable attempts to local hire with us, that is a conversation that we do have. But if it's found that if they have not shown good faith efforts, we have the ability to pursue damages for not meeting the contract obligations.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in that you asked earlier if we're dependent on the developer team, and it's not a dependence, it's actually a binding legal contract that's part of their overall transaction contract with EDC.
Okay. Excluding community benefit agreements, what other mechanisms are used to assure that impacted communities are assisted throughout development?
No, go ahead. Currently, again, in the spirit of transparency and our commitment to continue the repair and relationship building with communities, we are really focused on being able to track, as I mentioned before, more detailed disaggregated goal setting, disaggregated metrics. And so, mechanisms to track, as I mentioned before, the location, the gender, disaggregated by race and ethnicity data associated with projects as it relates to workforce development, diverse entrepreneurship, and just overall economic mobility. And so right now, that's a point for us to continue to grow and improve, and we think in support of some of the bills today, we'll be able to do better with that in the future.
Okay, great. How many city construction projects are over 100,000 square feet, both commercial and residential, during fiscal year